It's so clear how a person's relationship with their parents when they were small plays a huge role in how their romantic relationships take shape later. And this is what we're talking about when we describe attachment styles. There are 5 basic styles. Secure, which is people who were well loved as kids and they feel generally safe and flexible in relationships. Then there's anxious preoccupied, which is people who worry all the time that they're not getting enough love, it's going to go away. Then there's the dismissive avoidant, and then there's the fearful avoidant, and there's the disorganized attached person. Those last 3, the dismissive avoidant, the fearful avoidant, the disorganized person, these 3, they have trouble giving love in a way that makes insecure people feel okay. So I've noticed that in videos and online, a lot of discussion is by insecure types like me about how to understand and cope with all the other attachment styles. Today, though, my letter is from a woman I'll call Lisa, who self-identifies as the avoidant one, and she wants to know how she can be a better partner. I think that's great. So let's look at what Lisa says. She says, "Hi, Anna. I've been struggling with my healing journey with CPTSD, and I wanted to write you in hopes to gain guidance on how to handle my trauma and triggers now that I'm 25 and wanting to be healthy." All right. "When I was born, my angry, manipulative, post-military narcissist father was abusive on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically, and sexually." Okay. I'm circling stuff. I'll come back on a second reading, but let's go all the way through and see what Lisa has to say. "He never took accountability and never allowed us to express our thoughts or feelings. I have 2 older sisters, but I got the worst of it. We always lived on survival mode and grew up walking on eggshells. I understand that he was just projecting his own pain, but that doesn't help the triggers or trauma I'm dealing with today. My mom was unconditionally loving, but was submissive toward him and was living in a state of fear for her own life and her kids, and she was depressed. She did her best, but she wasn't able to protect us from him because he was too powerful. A few years later, my mom found the support and strength to get away from him and filed for divorce, and I refused to see him again. At this time, I was getting bullied really heavily. And I was told to end my life and that I would never be good enough or pretty enough by the kids at school. Damn kids. I was in a lot of pain at this time. When I was 14, my mom got diagnosed with cancer and passed away 2 weeks after we found out. I ended up having to move states to live with my aunt, who's very critical, made me feel like a burden, always compared me to others, and gave me body dimorphism. That's where you're like picking on yourself all the time, finding flaws with yourself. I was never enough for her. I also understand where her pain stems from, and I realize that it's a product of how she grew up and feels about herself. It still doesn't make it easier not to internalize. When I was 18, I moved out on my own, and in the years to come, I dated a few guys who all cheated on me, compared me, and made me feel like a burden to love. It really made me have so many trust issues and low self-esteem. Flash forward to now, I met such a beautiful soul last year, and he and I have been dating for about 6 months. He truly loves me and shows me what a true partner is and is very healthy and secure. The only problem is I realize that I have adopted some behaviors from my family and exes that I've been subconsciously projecting onto my very loving boyfriend, and I've drained him in many ways, such as fear of intimacy. I have an anxious avoidant attachment style, a lot of fears, insecurities, difficulty trusting, emotional unavailability, controlling tendencies, defensiveness, not feeling lovable, and worst case scenario, assumption thinking. He has been wonderful, and he supports my healing journey and loves me through it. I feel as I'm just hurting him by being so traumatized, and I can understand why he feels so drained. I was wondering if there's any guidance you have to help overcome all of this CPTSD trauma, and how to stop assuming the worst outcome or thinking the worst of my boyfriend and myself, as well as how to show up for him in a loving way while I'm getting triggered. Also, since I deal with hefty self-doubt and worthiness issues, is there any guidance you have on how to heal that fully and create a healthy, secure attachment? I love my boyfriend so much, and I'm here not to self-reject or self-sabotage and hurt him anymore through my pain. Do you think I can have a healthy partnership with him and myself after having all that abuse and pain? If so, how do I do that? Lisa. Okay. Gosh, Lisa, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Your trauma was pretty heavy. I'm so sorry all of that happened to you. You know, with the dad and the violence and then losing your mom, you know, after a 2-week illness with cancer when you were 14, and then an aunt who wasn't into you and picked on you. I can just totally understand why everything got hard for you. I can just totally understand it. And it sounds to me like you do have some compassion for yourself. But that's the thing, like we have sympathy for ourselves, ideally, that this happened, it wasn't our fault, it hurt us. And we still have a responsibility to try to overcome the behaviors that sabotage us and that hurt other people. So I'm just really proud of you. Like, you're so focused on a caring mission to overcome your trauma so that you can be good to somebody else. That's a very good goal. I'd love you for that. If everybody who ever had trauma did that, it would be a wonderful world, right? And that's what everybody's here watching. And so just thank you for being an example to all of us about how it's possible to have optimism and to take positive actions even when you've been through something terrible. I'm really happy you found somebody who loves you. That's wonderful. I believe you that the relationship is at risk. I just take you at face value about this. I'm not going to try to say, oh, no, it's fine, or, oh, it's so much worse than you think. I'm just going to take it at face value. It is what you say it is. There's a risk that you're going to ruin it with him. So I thought what was interesting is that you gave such a long list of attributes of yourself that are, you know, some pathological, something wrong. Anxious avoidant, a lot of fears, insecurities, difficulty trusting, emotional unavailability, controlling tendencies, and on and on. And you could be right, but anyway, I noticed that because it shows that you've been working on yourself. I can tell you've been working comprehensively to try to identify what's wrong. That's very good work, but please don't forget that those are all accompanied by all the strengths and virtues that you also bring to it. And I know they're there, or you would not be being loved right now by a good person, right? You wouldn't have even survived childhood if you didn't have strengths and good things about you, right? You know, that are also going on. So don't forget, you're a mix of things. You are a mix of things. Part of even the trauma itself has things that it gave you that make you special in a good way. I think a lot of us have grit. A lot of us have empathy for other people who are sad. A lot of us understand how complicated people can be, that they can, on the outside, look like everything's together, but be struggling on the inside. Like, we have a certain wisdom and strength as a result of growing up with trauma. So just don't be so hard on yourself. You're not just a bundle of faults. You're a bundle of all kinds of things. But this is what we're doing here when we're healing. We're learning to become aware of what might be going wrong, what we might be doing that's self-sabotaging or hurtful to others. You know, what might be just tripping ourselves and getting in our own way. We become aware of those things, and then gently, with the help of people who have perspective on this too. Because if you give it to us and we'll just, you know, you could just drown in all this like self-diagnosis. I'm so screwed up. I so know that feeling. It's just a horrible feeling to just be like, oh, when I think about it, it's just so many things are wrong with me. How could I even go on? So that's a wrong thought. That's a trauma-driven thought. You have a lot of words, but actually what you're talking about here are, in the approach that I use to heal, what you're talking about is a lot of different faces of what I label as fear and resentment. You know, it's like this anxiety and this anger. Those are like the two emotional buckets that all those negative feelings and reactions, they go in there, they're generated there. And to heal your trauma, it can help so much if you have a way to relieve and sort of decompress all that fear and resentment, to release it, to name it and get it out. So I'm always teaching about these techniques. That I learned them 29 years ago. My trauma was completely overwhelming. I was not okay at all at the time. Somebody happened to show me a way to name and write my fears and resentments on paper. If anybody watching, you're thinking of trying this, please take my free course. Don't just go start writing a bunch of negative thoughts on paper. That can make you feel worse. This is a specific technique to name and then release the fears and resentments, and the technique that I can show you. It's time tested. Many people have used it, and it will help you on your way. You do this twice a day, and then you follow it with meditation. And together, the writing and the meditation are what I call the daily practice. And I just keep doing it, and I keep overcoming my past in a way that I never thought was possible for myself. When I was, 30 years old, what was happening was my trauma was really like getting out of the bag. I had a bad thing happen. I was attacked on the street. Boom, all my trauma opened up. I had childhood PTSD, but it had been kind of contained before then, and it got out and I couldn't function. I couldn't read. I was panicking. I was like, oh my God, somebody save me. I was going to therapy 3 times a week. Nothing was saving me. And it would just happen in that moment. Somebody showed me how to do this, how to do this writing, and instantly, to be able to write what was bothering me on paper started to feel so much better. Now, again, I coach people on this all the time, and people who just write what's bothering them, it's sort of like ranting. You can ratchet yourself up this way. But writing, and there's research behind this. James Pennebaker from University of Texas in Austin has done research on what he calls emotional writing. People clinically recover faster. They get less sick. They get free of depression faster when they write their hurt feelings. The feelings that are sad and stressful are going on paper. It's a different brain pathway. It's a different brain pathway than talking about things. So it can represent a radical departure from what you were maybe conditioned to do, which is talk to friends or talk to a therapist, which can all be helpful, but it's really different than writing it, which can be a way of naming it and getting a release from it, getting the hold off of you. I just hear a lot of that. There's this self-attack going on. So the way your parents didn't take care of you, not only, kind of like left you to fend for yourself, but hurt you. What that can do is it can set you up to have this sort of insatiable need for somebody to kind of get in there and take care of you. And it gets so complicated with like attachment wounds, because on the one hand, you can't deal with it. You got to push them away, but it's like, I need you. I push you away. I need you. I push you away. And it's a lot of drama, right? So it's okay. It's normal. It's normal. But yeah, it can put so much strain on a relationship that it doesn't work. So what can be different is when you take your distressed thoughts instead of, and this is like, we're all conditioned to do this. It's like, honey, I'm feeling kind of anxious. I was thinking about something you said and it made me mad, and now I'm sad, and now I'm afraid you're going to leave. And we want to have all that through dialogue with them. But if you do that, it starts to like set off fireworks and problems and like, hey, I didn't say that. Now you're making things up. And now you're in an argument, and an argument can be even more dysregulating. So before you try to talk to your partner about something that you're feeling upset about or you're worried you did wrong, first you take it to the paper. First you take it to the paper and you begin. I have fear, for example, I shouldn't have put so many demands on Roger. Made up a name, right? Fear I'm too needy, fear I was harsh, fear sooner or later he's going to get sick of me. So I'm just, speculating what your fears might be there. I'm resentful at myself. It could be yourself. It could be somebody else. I'm resentful at myself because I have fear. I didn't read that book that the therapist mentioned, and fear now I'm acting out, and fear I could have done better, and fear Roger will see that I didn't even try. So I'm just making things up about things that you might write if you do this daily practice. And all of these fears come out on paper, and then you stop and you take a rest in a very simple, restful meditation for 20 minutes. Just sit down, close your eyes, have a rest. I tell people, you can all get this in the free class that I teach, the daily practice. And I will show you a link at the end of the video. But when you do this, all that that anxiety, that worry, that anxious attachment feeling, those emotions, they go out on the paper and you have a little break from them. And they're going to come back, they always do. But if you keep releasing them enough times after you write, there's a whole thing that you write at the end to release it or ask for it to be removed. And And if you do that enough times, you start to get in the habit of actually releasing it and not carrying it around. When you have less of that fear and resentment in here, you have less demands, less accusation, less crying, less fighting coming out of your mouth and coming out towards the people you love. That's how it works. Those feelings have to go somewhere. They have to go somewhere, but talking about them is not always productive. So the daily practice is a way you can name and write them. You can also get a buddy to do it with and read to them sometimes. And that's a wonderful thing that we can facilitate in our membership program. We do that. But the first step is to just learn the technique. And that's what I want to encourage people to do. So I think you can save your relationship. I think that's entirely possible. What needs to ratchet down is the negativity and intensity that I'm intuiting you're saying, that you're having a lot of inner turmoil about the dynamic going on, and you're not giving him, you say you're avoidant. So if you're avoidant, that would mean that you're sort of pulling away. You're not being very emotionally responsive to him when he's hurt. So an avoidant can be a good partner, but what they can, there's a compensation you can do. I think avoidants are likely to be avoidant all their lives to one degree or another, but you can teach yourself skills to be a good partner anyway. And what it involves is, in a nutshell, you got to meet your partner halfway. So let's say your partner likes to be verbally reassured that when they say, I love you, that you say, I love you back. When they say, that hurt my feelings that you said that, you say, oh, tell me about that. Why do you feel that way? You don't just go, I'm not going to listen to this again. I'm going in the other room, or ignore when somebody is reaching out to say they love you. The Gottman Institute, the Gottmans have come up with a technique that's very helpful for couples, I think. And they talk about this idea of bids. Members of a couple make a bid to the other when they're like, ooh, do you think this shirt looks nice on me? That's a bid to look at me, pay attention, connect with me. Or you could say, boy, it'd be really nice to sit down and just have dinner together right now. That's a bid. We say things to try to invite the person to kind of connect with us. And what avoidant people do is it goes over their head sometimes. And so you want to teach yourself to hear the bid that they're asking for your attention and time right now. And it's not wrong. It's a little different than how you would do things if you were in charge of reality, but none of us is. So an avoidant person can meet halfway, but the other person has to have a little bit of allowance. This is an avoidant person. Don't freak out if they're a little bit aloof sometimes. That's how they're wired. They meet you halfway too, and that, I think, is how people can have a good relationship, even though they have different attachment styles, and neither of them are secure. That's entirely possible. I think you said that your boyfriend does have secure attachment, but different things can work if people are willing to pay attention to what's needed by their partner. So I wish you luck with that. If anybody watching feels like your trauma in your past is affecting your romantic life, I have a quiz. It lists common symptoms that show up in your dating and relationship life, and you can take that quiz right here. And I will see you very soon.